It's an ambush.
Oh my God, it's an ambush!
It's an ambush!
Of course!
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to an ambush stream. Oh my gosh, can you believe it? Well, if you could believe it, it wouldn't be much of an ambush. But yes, welcome to Monday. I'm kind of in a mindset of trying to make up for the fact I'll be gone this coming Sunday for the Sunday stream. I'll be visiting my parents. At the same time, though, something happened this morning. I don't know why I suddenly have like a Casey Kasem voice going. I apologize. Something happened this morning that caught my attention. And it was a podcast from the New York Times. And the title of the podcast, let me get it up here just to make sure I get it right. Trump's attack on D.E.I. will cost us all. Oh my gosh, how is it going to cost us all? Trump's attack on, not D.E.I. itself will cost us all, which it already has in untold expanses. But Trump's attack on D.E.I. will cost us all. Yeah, it'll probably cost us all in, and by all, I mean the people actually practicing it. It'll cost them all legal fees as they try to defend themselves against, in many cases, demonstrable violations of federal law. But what exactly does the New York Times mean by that? Well, we'll find out in a moment. Just as a note for those of you listening, there is nothing to watch here in particular unless you like to watch the little gray circle move in and out of my avatar as I speak, because this is a podcast. I have to have a little window open because the way that this works, it still shows an image, but there's nothing visual to see. So you can listen to this without missing anything on the way to work, on the way home, or whatever you're doing. But before I get to today's special presentation, who's joining me on this beautiful Monday, still morning, where I am, 11:30, Alexander. Good morning. Sabian 187. Good morning. The Luke Skywalker 2. Good morning. Tyr Alexander the Scourge. Good morning to you. Tyre Deos. Good morning. Kiever Dam, good morning to you, and thank you, Kiever Dam, for providing the link to Moonshock's GoFundMe, guys. I've talked about this previously, but Moonshock is a longtime viewer of not only my channel, but of Lords of the Night in general and elsewise. He has battled and won the battles with cancer many times, but the medical bills for ongoing treatment are still piling up. So if you guys can take a look at that GoFundMe link at the top of the chat box. If you are able to donate, please consider doing so. And even if you're not, if you can share that out on social media, that would be appreciated. So thank you ahead of time for that. And thank you, Kiefer Dam, for providing the link as always. Angela Arriaga, good morning. Who else is here? Anybody else? Kiro Soldier, good morning to you. Shady Grin, good morning. Mike Savage, Blarg, JB, good afternoon where you are. I'll capitulate for politeness' sake. The best Remy, good afternoon. Somnamnul Nation, good morning. Attack Alpaca, good morning. The Dead Man, good morning to you. Resolute Germ, good morning. Also, the Dead Man, I think I saw you, at least in super chat form, over on Midnight's Edge earlier. So good morning. Corbin Dallas, good morning. Morgan King, good morning to you. Anybody else? Spittle Buggies, good morning. Simon Willikins, good morning. The Full Metal Joker, good morning. And Robert Pincus, good morning to you. And anybody else I missed, I hope I didn't miss anybody, but anybody else I missed, or is lurking, or is in the future, good morning. All right, so a slightly, 10-minute long podcast from the New York Times telling us how Trump's war on DEI, I was about to say war on TDS, Trump's war on DEI will cost us all. What does that mean? I don't know. Let's find out together. And here we go.
My name is Farrah Stockman, and I am a member of the New York Times editorial board.
Ooh, a member of the editorial board. Well, good. We got an official here. Okay, so this is an editorial. This is from their opinions section. So I'll attribute everything said to the speaker and not necessarily to the New York Times, even though, guilt by association.
I also write about foreign policy and domestic politics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as we come to the end of Biden's term, I think it's really important for Americans to reflect on the diversity of this administration.
The diversity of this administration. Okay, yeah, let's reflect on the diversity of this administration. Shall we talk about the entirely DEI hire that was the Vice President of the United States? Shall we talk about that nuclear regulatory individual, the bald dress-wearing guy that stole luggage and got fired? Shall we talk about the staffers who decided to have relations of a kind in the Capitol building? Yeah, what kind of diversity do you want to talk about? Or how about all of the I'm trying to keep it family friendly here as much as I can. How about all the outlandish behavior by individuals who were invited to the White House lawn in the last couple of years? Anything about that?
It really is the most diverse administration in American history.
No, it's not. Every administration is a diverse administration if you're actually going by the definition of the word. You're just talking about aesthetics. Aesthetics and non-determinative factors of people's makeup. Because if you're promoting DEI, I know that's what you're talking about.
And that was a goal of Joe Biden's.
Oh yeah, no, this was an intentional initiative by Biden from the get-go. Diversity, equity, and inclusion was written into executive orders and policies and on and on and on and on and on.
On the campaign trail, Biden promised to appoint a cabinet that looked like the American people.
No, he appointed a cabinet that looked like the progressive stack. He appointed a cabinet on the basis of aesthetics first, merit or achievement at best second, likely third or fourth.
And he really did deliver. More than half of his cabinet were people of color.
Okay, yeah, so again, we're just talking aesthetics. What does someone's skin color say about their abilities to govern or administrate or anything? I'm pausing for a long moment here to let everybody think about that. What does someone's skin color say about their qualifications to be in government? Do tell.
He had the first African-American Secretary of Defense.
Are you going to name this person?
Lloyd Austin.
Oh, you did name that person. Okay, so the first thing about this guy, are you going to mention anything else about Lloyd Austin? Any qualifying elements?
Deb Haaland was the first Native American to serve in a cabinet.
Uh-huh. Yeah, just notice what she is not saying.
As she was Secretary of Interior, he had the first openly gay permanent cabinet secretary, Pete Buttigieg.
And how has that turned out for the Department of Transportation and the rest of us, by the way?
The first female Treasury Secretary.
Uh-huh.
Janet Yellen. He had a lot of firsts.
Wow. 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 I'll do mine. What's that guy? You always see that stinger in some place, the guy going, wow. And all of these things say what about their abilities to fulfill the requirements of their jobs? If you have an answer for that all by itself, there's words for that belief system.
I really started to think about the importance of the Biden administration's diversity when I took a trip to Jamaica.
Because Jamaica is so diverse?
A few years ago, and a friend of mine in Kingston was telling me that gay people in Kingston were starting to bring home their boyfriends or girlfriends for Christmas.
Oh my gosh. So what?
For the first time in their lives, because the Biden administration had appointed gay people to positions of power.
Wait a second. The culture of Jamaica shifted on its axis because of the cabinet decisions of Joe Biden. I want to make sure I got this right. Jamaica's socio-cultural mores were flipped on their head in the year 2021 because of Joe Biden's cabinet picks. Is that Do I have that right? Oh, sure. I totally believe you.
Pete Buttigieg and Karine Jean-Pierre, who is speaking for the White House from the podium.
Oh, boy, howdy, was she. And I'll tell you what, I will not miss her obfuscations and prevarications and bullying of the press for asking questions. Of course, I will hold against the press not pushing back more, save for a couple of individuals. And what? What does any of that have to do with any? So Pete Buttigieg and Jean-Pierre changed the culture of Jamaica all by their lonesome. Just by being there. Wow.
And that mattered. It mattered to him, and it mattered to these well-to-do Jamaican families that were kind of taking the cues of what's socially acceptable from the White House.
Oh, so a country largely populated by black people needed a white man to give them permission to change their minds. I mean, if you say so.
And so it just kind of got me thinking about what it means when the most powerful country in the world is modeling acceptance.
Modeling acceptance? It's not modeling acceptance. That's not what DEI does. If it was modeling acceptance, then these elements would be irrelevant. You wouldn't be talking about Lloyd Austin only as an African American. You'd be talking about Lloyd Austin, the man, and not the color. You'd be talking about Janet Yellen, the woman, and not the gender, if you know what I'm talking about here. This is ridiculous on its face.
Of not only gay people, but also different races.
Oh, wow. Uh-huh. Because, prior to Joe Biden, there was nothing that happened in this country. If you only care about the aesthetics of things, nothing happened in this country prior to Joe Biden that indicated a change in attitudes about race or gender or anything else when it comes to American politics. I mean, Hillary Clinton didn't, run for president and get the popular vote in 2016. No. Barack Obama wasn't president for 2 terms. No. These things didn't happen, guys. There was nothing that occurred prior to Joe Biden that indicated to either this country or the rest of the world that things were changing in visible ways, if that is your concern. No. Only Joe Biden did this, guys. Only Joe Biden.
Serving in high positions.
Yeah, Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court doesn't matter. It didn't matter. It was no sign to anybody of anything. Nah.
Through my reporting over 4 years, I started asking, what does this diversity mean? How does it impact the way people do their jobs?
Wait, how does the diversity impact the way they do their jobs? Now, the question you should be asking is, did their diversity qualify them for their jobs? Aside from actual merit. That's the real question you should be asking. Why was this person hired? Were they hired specifically because they fit into a demographic, not because they possess the requisite skills and experience to do the job? That should be your first question. But no.
So Wally Odiemo, who is Deputy Treasury Secretary, was in charge of revamping the sanctions policies.
The sanctions policies? Which sanctions? Against Russia and such?
He's from Nigeria.
Oh my gosh. So what?
And he had grown up watching his parents send money through Western Union to their relatives. So
oh my gosh. So what?
He had a personal life experience with what it is like if the U.S. government suddenly cuts off a community from its financial lifeline in the United States.
Okay. Does he have, and I don't know anything about this person. aside from now that he's from Nigeria and his family had financial struggles sending money back to Nigeria. So?
And that led him to argue for tweaks and changes that would have made it less likely that an innocent person would get caught up in U.S. sanctions.
What are you talking? Okay, and I honestly have no point of reference for this. What are you talking about? An innocent person being caught up in U.S. sanctions? What do you mean? I mean, if you're talking about like sanctions to a country that has misbehaved or something, yes, people who are not directly involved are going to be hurt. That's part of the reason you do sanctions. It's because to put pressure on the populace to change the minds of the leaders doing bad things. I hate to tell you this. I don't know if you know how global politics work nation to nation. That is the point of sanctions. Okay.
I asked the same question to Samira Fazali, who was in charge of Biden's industrial policy. What does it mean that your family is from India and held Kashmir?
It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. That same descriptor could be applied to millions of people. Question is, what qualifies her to be in that job specifically?
And you're here serving in the U.S. government. And she said, oh, yeah, I knew how angry my relatives who are living abroad would be if they couldn't get Ukrainian grain.
What? I knew how... You know, honestly, you don't need to have a direct familial experience or reference point for the economy of grain supplies to understand how important Ukrainian grain was to the world food supply. What does that have to do with anything? What does the country of her origin have to do with anything?
After the war started, she said, I knew they were going to blame Americans, not Russians. So I volunteered to coordinate the effort to get food security to places in the global south.
Wait. So Ukraine is invaded, and the people in the global south were going to blame the U.S. for the lack of grain supply. Because... Okay, I'm confuzzled. But here's my question. What does her country of origin have to do with this? We need to reassure those in the global south that the U.S. is not to blame for the curtailed grain supply from Ukraine that was invaded by Russia?
Because of the conversations that I had with my relatives.
Wait, I'm backing up a little bit. It's difficult to tell when she's talking about herself or she's talking about someone that she's talking to.
To get food security to places in the global south because of the conversations that I had with my relatives. I spoke with people who work with Shalonda Young, a Black woman serving as director of the Office of Management and Budget.
Why just say her name? Why do I need to know her skin color? You know, there's a word for people who focus inordinately on someone's race over any other element of their personal merit or makeup. I'm suddenly forgetting what that word is. I'm sure somebody will remind me.
She grew up in a very small town in Louisiana, and people who work with her told me how she always looked at the budget through the lens of what it's like to be in a rural area super far from a hospital.
Okay, so her perspective is informed more by her class situation, her tax bracket, let's say, which has nothing to do with her skin color, does it? I mean, that is actually an experience and a condition that says something of someone's knowledge and merit, potentially. Whereas non-determinative factor like the melanin count in their skin doesn't.
She also had a really amazing way with Republicans. She knew how to charm them because she was from Louisiana and she had dealt with a lot of Republicans.
Okay, so she has some life experience. See, you're not making a good case for why her skin color is so relevant. So far, you've talked about her life experience in the economic situation that she was in, and her life experience in associating with certain political parties growing up. That's all merit. That's all knowledge. What does her skin color have to do with any of that?
From the South. She is credited with personally guiding the U.S. government away from shutdown.
She is? How?
Biden administration did not have a major government shutdown over budgets.
So, yeah, so all by her lonesome, she did. What?
And some people say it's because of her. She was.
Some people say. Okay, okay, all right. You know what? For the sake of argument, I'll stipulate. I don't even know who this lady is. I don't know what she did. I don't know if we'll even hear what she purportedly did. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, she was the linchpin. She was the keystone. What part of that process was so well informed by the color of her skin? Exactly.
Was so charming, and she knew how to work the Hill.
So she had skills. She had diplomatic skills because of her skin color?
And so when you hear the critique of DEI hires, there's this sense that, oh, the people who are in these positions, they don't deserve them, right?
The problem is that the question mark is put over everyone's head, the same as an affirmative action, that someone has been granted a job or given a position or an opportunity, first and foremost, on the basis of their aesthetic or their demographic fit. That there may be someone more qualified out there that was disregarded as a candidate because they did not look the part. This is the problem with affirmative action, and why, thankfully, it's now been done away with, and this remains the problem with DEI. Even if you hire somebody who is fully qualified and the best candidate ever, because some company has declared that they are a diverse, equitable, and inclusive company, well, that puts the question mark over everybody's head that you hire that falls within the preferred demographics. Especially when companies, and at least by extension what we're hearing here, elevate non-determinative factors as goals, as things to be celebrated or placed on a pedestal. You talk about tolerance. You talk about increasing tolerance. Okay, well, how about increasing tolerance for people who aren't of a particular skin color? Why are white people suddenly a wrong thing to have around you? You haven't talked at all about any white men. Are they not diverse enough for you? You know, you elevate skin color, you elevate gender ahead of any other qualification, and then you just crow about, oh, look how talented she is, and how her life experience has informed her ability to work with people and reach across the aisle and do this, that, and the other. Well, golly. And all of those things could have been true about anybody, and I wouldn't have even known or cared about their skin color. But DEI is inherently racist, it's inherently sexist, and its practice almost exclusively violates federal law. I don't know what to tell you. But here's the thing, even if I said that someone was a DEI hire, if DEI is so good, what's to be offended by? If DEI is a net positive, then someone who is a recipient of the benefits of DEI, that should be a plus. correct?
Simply because they're Black, or
No, not simply. Well, who is making them simply Black? Who described Lloyd Austin the way that you did? Oh, that's right, you did. He's Black. You're proving the argument against it the way that you are describing the process.
right? Simply because they're Black, or simply because they're brown. But someone like Shalonda Young,
Someone like Shalonda Young, who you first described as what? Before you said anything else. How did you describe her?
proves that wrong.
No. How do we know that a more talented, more qualified, potentially more successful individual was not hired for her position when we have to be suspicious about why she was hired for her position with DEI? Again, here's the thing. She may be, here's the problem with DEI, here's the problem with affirmative action. She may be the most qualified person in the country to fulfill the services and the position she was given. She may be. But if you're going to say, well, DEI was a thing that Biden promoted, look how diverse his cabinet is, look at all the diversity in his administration, and you have this woman who's doing a great job, but how can you possibly say that she was hired because of her race? Because you are promoting that very philosophy. You can't both say that DEI is good and then criticize anybody for suspecting that someone was hired in part because of DEI. And here's the other thing they always like to say. DEI doesn't necessarily mean unqualified. The question mark becomes, are they underqualified compared to someone else that fell outside of the demographic preference? And we can't know the answer to that question, and it's the doubt. It is the doubt that is the problem. The same issue with affirmative action. How have these guys not learned the lesson of affirmative action at this point?
Biden's commitment to diversity in his cabinet and his administration was historic.
Really? I mean, admittedly, I don't have an entire roll call of everybody that Obama hired, but okay. Yeah, it was historic, but he made it so explicit that he was going to hire people on the basis of their aesthetic first and foremost. Kamala Harris being the most outstanding example.
It was important. It was far-reaching.
Oh, yeah.
I do think it, there were times you could argue it went too far.
Oh! Okay. Now, honestly, I'm surprised. Is our speaker about to concede a point to the other side? Okay. Well, give me an example of when he went too far.
Or that they talked about it in a way that was just destined to invite backlash.
No. If you're being honest in your presentation, you don't get to make the move of alluding to a concession and then not giving us what example you were thinking of. When did Biden, in your estimation, go too far? You're not going to tell us, are you? I have doubts now.
When you say, I'm going to appoint a Black woman to the Supreme Court, you open yourself up to people concluding that that Black woman isn't qualified.
Yes! Oh my gosh! Okay, now, please, you're right. You're right on the cusp of it. Because that is no different than the implications of DEI writ large. You're right there. Why is this so difficult? This has been the conundrum that has followed me around for 8+ years now. When it's so obvious to anybody that thinks about it for 3 seconds, and yet you have all of these people who are either my age or older or just slightly young enough, but still have some idea of how wrong this thinking is. Have to, historically or otherwise. So yes, if Biden declares before there's even people on the list that he wants a black woman on the Supreme Court, doesn't that eliminate a whole swath of possibly more qualified possibilities? Doesn't it?
Except for the color of her skin.
Let me back up a little bit. Back up a little bit. Well, the color of her skin and the nature of her genitals. Let's remember that part too.
Black woman isn't qualified except for the color of her skin. I wish he had just appointed her.
Yeah, it would have made a lot more sense, wouldn't it? And so now that he did, though, now that he made that declaration, what does that make you feel regarding DEI policies? If you have such sort of retroactive regret over pre-qualifying whoever's going to fit into that role on the basis of their gender and their race, why do you support DEI? Do you not see the problem that your discomfort is informing you of that the rest of us see?
And not mentioned her race.
Yeah, well, go back to your list of examples in Biden's cabinet. What was the first element, the only element you brought up about any of their makeups?
I think the Biden administration's commitment to diversity was poorly understood.
No. It was clearly understood. Clearly understood.
So the first couple years, most of the pushback, or a lot of the pushback, came from liberals who were saying, okay, yeah, the most diverse cabinet in U.S. history, whatever, dude. Look at the inner circle around Joe Biden. It's still full of white people.
Oh, my God. Yeah, it's just so performative. You know, a liberal Democrat, a progressive in this country. Yeah, it's so performative, guys. Yeah. And that's still a problem for you, huh? There's too many white people around? I mean, a progressive would never do something that's purely for the sake of virtue signaling and performative stuff. Red meat for the masses on the far left. No, they never do that, right? Okay, so Biden wasn't... We got some no true Scotsman thing going on here. Oh, speaking of which, I do have a... Oh, I should have just pushed the button. Yeah, see, Biden's hiring all these diverse people, but at the very top, there's still so many white people.
And so that was kind of a fatal flaw. It had no constituency. Liberals were going to say that whatever they did was never enough. Uh-huh. And Republicans were going to come out swinging against it with all they had.
Yeah, okay. You have just described nearly every social battle, culture war element in America since 2014. You can never please one of the social justice crowd with anything that you do. Nothing you do will ever be enough, and they will always demand more, to take more and more power away and feel like they have power of their own, to tear down the institutions of the past and rebuild them into a glorious future of inclusivity that was always kind of there. I just think about things like Dungeons and Dragons and Warhammer and Star Wars and Star Trek and on and on and on. Take. Never satisfied. The line has never been pushed far enough. I'm glad this lady's coming to these realizations. She's about 10 years too late, and she doesn't seem to be aware of the fatal flaw of her own argument in talking about her own frustrations. I hope she sees the light someday. Thank you, Tyre Deos. I mean, that Supreme Court judge refused to say what a woman was when she was a woman. I know, right? Yeah, a sitting Supreme Court justice has no idea how to define a woman. Oh, but she was eminently qualified to be on the Supreme Court because of her race and her gender, according to Joe Biden. And also, according to our speaker, because here's the thing, it's not that she disagrees with why Ketanji Brown or Jackson Brown was put on the Supreme Court. She just didn't want Biden to say it out loud, because that kind of gave away the play. Did you notice that? You notice that she's not that jazzed about how Biden packaged the whole endeavor, but she just wishes that it had happened without him saying so, because that puts some shade on it. That puts a question mark on it. Oh, and yet she seemingly can't understand why anybody else, right-wing or otherwise, might have a problem with that kind of thinking. It's amazing.
And so 4 years later, Joe Biden didn't campaign on DEI, didn't campaign on diversity, and Kamala Harris didn't. And
Kamala Harris didn't? Yeah. You know why? Because it's a failure. They knew it was a failure. They knew it wasn't going to get them anywhere. The writing was on the wall. I will hammer this home as many times as I have to. When the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action, they did so in a very, very specific way, because the people arguing for affirmative action argued their case in a very specific way. If you go back and listen to the oral arguments from the lawyers for affirmative action, every talking point they used, every argument they made in favor of affirmative action is the exact same rhetoric that I've been hearing from DEI and diversity advocates for 8 years. The argument to diversity was their defense. And the Supreme Court said no, an argument to diversity does not justify being discriminatory against people's opportunities on the basis of race in college admissions. And so under Title VI and under the 14th Amendment, affirmative action goes bye-bye. Except that Title VI is the kissing cousin of Title VII, which affects employment. And so if a diversity argument to the Supreme Court does not justify racial discrimination in college admissions, it already fails on its face to justify any kind of similar discrimination in employment. And race is on exactly the same legal footing under Title VII as gender, as sex, as country of origin, as religion, etc. So every company in America, every organization that has been using some kind of diversity argument for their DEI programs, they're putting themselves under the spotlight for legal action. And Biden already knew it was a losing argument, especially if he was trying to get more votes than Trump and trying to win back something from the middle, which he wouldn't have, and Kamala Harris didn't either. Thank you. This is Kyle. Hello, Chat and Scribe. She didn't like Biden saying it solely because it gives her political enemies ammunition to fight against her racist ideology. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This is the thing. They want it covert. They don't want it said out loud. They just want to be able to say, mm-hmm. Because if you say it out loud, you give away the secret. It's like a magician giving away their tricks, right? Once you know it, it takes away all its power. It takes away all its impact. Yeah, so Ketanji Brown Jackson, she's already not there because Biden gave away the secret. Biden gave away the motivation. She's not there for her merit. She wasn't selected because she's the best. She's selected because, first and foremost, she fit the demographic desire. That's it. And they don't like that. Because that gives credence to the worst ideas of the past as being something that they're trying to brand as something virtuous.
you could argue she couldn't because they
Let me back up a little bit, pardon me.
didn't campaign on DEI, didn't campaign on diversity, and Kamala Harris didn't. And you could argue she couldn't because they slandered her as a DEI hire.
No, okay. Your problems with how Biden handled the Supreme Court justice, go back to 2019, go back to 2020. Biden said explicitly that he wanted to have a female vice president and preferably a woman of color before he even got to picking Kamala Harris. So your same problems that you just stated with how Biden handled the Supreme Court are the exact same origins of Kamala Harris as vice president. What do you have to say about that?
But, this administration invested so much in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Literally billions of dollars were.
Yeah, exactly. Billions of taxpayer dollars. And what has our return been for that investment?
Put into this, and they couldn't campaign on it. They couldn't tell you what they did because it had become a toxic subject.
Why? If it is so demonstrably positive, if it has such obvious returns and benefits, why? I mean, isn't that just capitulating to the right then? So Joe Biden and Kamala Harris just, deer in the headlights because, oh no, we can't talk about DEI, we'll be crucified by our political enemies? Try to work through the logic of this again for me, would you?
Around the world, we're seeing a rise in ethno-nationalism.
Ethno-nationalism. Okay, examples, please.
Even in democracies like India, it's become very difficult to be Muslim in India right now.
Okay, I admittedly, I do not know all the inner workings of India, so why is that? Or what is your theory on that?
You're seeing people all over the world retreat into their ethnic and religious identities.
Are Muslims not doing that?
But the United States, under the Biden administration, was something different.
How?
And I feel like...
No. How? What? This is a writer for the New York Times editorial board. An editorial, more often than not, is a kind of persuasive essay. We've talked about this any number of times before on TEDx, TED Excellence. If you're going to bring up something, you can't just leave it as an abstract. You have to give us examples. You have to provide us evidence. If you thought the Biden administration went too far in something, you have to give an example of what you mean. Okay. If the Biden administration is different than the ethno-nationalism of suppressed Muslims in India, well, in what way? What demonstrates that?
We're in danger of losing that right
Losing what?
now.
Oh man, it's not even a TED Excellence. It's not even a TED Excellence.
What?
What is that? What the fuck is that?
Yeah, literally, we're losing that. Losing what? WTF is losing what again?
Something different. And I feel like we're in danger of losing that
You feel like.
right now. Republicans have come out swinging against DEI efforts.
Good. And if you had any self-reflection on what DEI is, like you've already talked about, maybe you would be too. I mean, if you had places of work and governmental institutions that were first filtering out possible hires on the basis of their race or gender first and foremost, if they were rejecting women and people of color, you'd probably have a problem with that, wouldn't you? You know what? I would too. That's why we have Title VI and Title VII. That's why that whole civil rights movement happened back in the 60s. And yet, what does DEI do again? What was your complaint again? And what were you hailing as the most prominent and important elements of the people you listed at the top of this editorial? You just can't see it, can you? Thank you, Ty Deos. Again, the Biden administration shoved a national secular religion of DEI communism. Yeah. Yep. Social Marxism, communism, DEI, it's all interwoven with one another. It's trying to put aesthetics above merit. It's creating a demographic class system. And in a lot of ways, it already has. There are people in this country who have to be protected because of what they look like first and foremost. Instead of moving to a place where these things are irrelevant, right? Like the color of somebody's eyes or the color of somebody's hair. If somebody said, I'm leaving this person out of this job opportunity or whatever else because they have green eyes, you think they were nuts. Oh, but if I say, oh, well, I'm practicing DEI and I'm looking to increase my, demographics of people of color, well, no, that's fine. When skin color and eye color have effectively the same level of relevance to someone's merit. But we don't think in those terms. No. We have to address the evils of the past by repeating the worst parts of our history.
They've talked about it as communism.
Oh my gosh! Tyree Deos! Tyree Deos, this one's for you. That was great. They've talked about it like communism. Oh yeah, I wonder why. I wonder why that is. Why have they talked about it like communism? You want to explore that a little bit? You want to compare the similarities between communist thinking and DEI a little bit?
Republicans have come out swinging against DEI efforts. They've talked about it as communism. They've talked about it as destroying meritocracy.
Yeah, all right. So they've said that. Now, are you going to spend even a modicum of a moment considering their side of the argument, or are you going to dismiss it out of hand?
And the Republicans have promised to bring back the issue of merit, which is pretty ironic given the people Donald Trump has nominated for his own administration.
Now that, she has a point. I was talking about this over on Latino Slant last week or whatever. The people who would complain about the evils and the downfalls of DEI being a non-meritorious-based system are correct. But then you look at some of the people that Donald Trump has appointed to positions of authority in his upcoming administration, and you got to ask the same question that I did to Pauly, or at least his audience. I said, is cronyism an acceptable alternative to DEI? Now, Matt Gaetz being nominated to Attorney General. Kristi Noem being put up at the head of Department of Homeland Security. And those are the two that are most prominent in my mind. People that have no real legal or law enforcement experience whatsoever, but are just people that are sycophantic to Trump and or people that Trump likes. So not a merit-based system either. Or I really like this person from Fox News, so I'm going to put them into a position of authority. I don't like that any better than DEI. It's not nearly as demonstrably violating of federal law as DEI. But on its face, I don't like it either. So she finally makes a good point. However, here's the thing, lady. Two wrongs don't make a right. So if you're comparing what Donald Trump is doing as not meritorious, are you conceding then that DEI is also not meritorious? You haven't defended DEI by saying that.
And how unqualified they are.
Yeah.
Trump has even said that he would encourage Congress to create a fund for people who had been discriminated against.
Uh-huh. Is that any different than the fund, just as one example, the Department of Transportation created specifically for contractors based on the race of the people running the companies? You're not going to bring up the very similar in theme initiatives and agendas and policies that Biden practiced when you're criticizing what Trump may do. Come on. This is ridiculous.
By the Biden administration, insinuating that the ones who had been elevated to positions of power under this rubric of diversity were unqualified. So
Listen to what you are saying. Why were you uncomfortable with the selection of Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court, preceded by Biden saying he wanted a black woman on the Supreme Court? Why did that make you uncomfortable? Why do you regret him saying that? Come on. You have to see the inherent problem with your position first and foremost before you start criticizing Trump. You're just not willing to let go that you're on the right side of this.
So there's this message that if you are black or brown and you had an important position, that, you didn't deserve it.
That is the same doubt that is instilled in any situation where you have a stated official preference. It's not a theory. It's not a myth. It's just like affirmative action. If DEI is good, why is thinking that someone is a DEI hire bad? If you can't answer that question, maybe you should rethink your position.
The more I thought about it, the more I realized that diversity was really a key source of power for the United States. It was
actual diversity of thought and experience and knowledge and skills, not aesthetics.
Our comparative advantage, because newcomers can come here and know that eventually they could rise and they could serve in the highest levels of the American government.
Because if they couldn't see it, they couldn't believe they could achieve it. And the only way they could see it is if they see themselves in the people leading the country.
Could come here and help run the place. But newcomers who go to China or Russia, that's not true. I mean, this has always been our strength. Henry Kissinger was an American born. Madeleine Albright was an American born.
Oh my gosh, you're right. They were both white. But now you're talking about people coming from other countries in general. You're not talking about DEI. And did Kissinger get where he was just because he was white? Or did he leverage his diabolical knowledge and skill to get where he was?
If you think about people who represent the United States on the world stage.
If you think about people who represent the United States on the world stage, they are United States citizens. I don't care what they look like, as long as they have the qualifications to be doing what they're doing. The United States, you're right, the United States is not one color. It's one constitution. But you're really, really stuck on the visible parts of things, aren't you?
A number of them have not been born here. I can't say we're the only country like that.
So what are you saying?
But there's not many.
Yes, it's true. America's pretty great if you think about it. But it's also vulnerable to nonsense like this without a check on it.
It's really a source of strength for us if we do it right.
I think Trump's family were immigrants as well. I don't know if you know this. I believe Trump's family is one of immigrants. What exactly is the danger of Trump? What is going to be the cost of Trump's war on DEI? I still haven't heard that part yet.
I will say that a majority of Americans still say they feel that these efforts are important.
A majority? What majority? These efforts are important. What, DEI? Why?
It's losing popularity from where it was in the wake of the George Floyd protests.
Yeah, thankfully, because George Floyd was used as an excuse to push these agendas for ESG scores and funding and such. And that's all falling by the wayside because the bottom lines are not lining up with what McKinsey promised would happen.
But still, the majority of Americans believe it's important.
A majority of Americans believe it's important. What are you talking about?
And we shouldn't forget that.
Well, a majority of Americans thought Donald Trump should be president. So presumably a majority of Americans agree in some way, shape, or form with his agenda of getting rid of DEI. So should we not forget that? Apparently that's it. Okay, well, there you go. The New York Times editorial person, the title of which was supposed to be Trump's attack on DEI will cost us all, never talked specifically about Trump's attack on it, and certainly did not talk about what the cost would be as a result. And in the course of it, she revealed that she herself sees the problems with DEI, but isn't willing to admit to them. In comparing her complaints of Donald Trump's selections for his leadership team, she just couldn't quite get over the line of seeing where the complaints against DEI as well reside. And even in her own introductions of figures that she's lauding as successes in the Biden administration under a diverse philosophy, what did she talk about? Their race, their gender, nothing else. Didn't talk about Lloyd Austin's qualifications, didn't talk about Janet Yellen's qualifications, didn't talk about Janet Yellen as a scholar or Lloyd Austin as a military veteran. No, just first and foremost, race, gender. And then when she did actually have to describe somebody's abilities, she talked about their knowledge and personal experience and skills. And yet somehow DEI is really important. Oh, but saying I'm going to hire somebody based on their race and gender, no, don't do that. I still want you to do so. Just don't say it out loud. I mean, everything you need to know about the problems with DEI and the people that advocate and defend it are pretty much contained in this podcast right here. The cognitive dissonance between trying to defend something that is demonstrably demeaning and yet trying to brand it as something beneficial and fruitful and connect it to diversity of thought and diversity of experience and diversity of skill set, and say that somehow that belongs with race, that belongs with gender? How? And if you do make that argument, doesn't that make you a racist? Doesn't that make you a sexist? I don't know, guys. I just listen to the stuff, try to make some sense of it, but there's not much sense to it. Mike Savage, I am less informed after listening to her than I was before. Well, I wanted to know what the argument was. I wanted to know what it was going to cost us. Apparently, it's going to cost us billions of dollars being spent on it over the last 4 years that got us nothing that was worth crowing about during the election. Here's the part that she didn't quite make the connection to either. If Biden spent, as she says, billions on DEI over 4 years, and then when both he and Kamala Harris went out campaigning and did not use any of those quote unquote DEI successes as part of their campaign, exactly how beneficial was it? You know, I've said it before. If a company knows that DEI benefited it over the course of time in a real measurable way, why wouldn't you point to it and say, here's the day we started our DEI program, and 6 months later, our profits rose by 150%. And we know for a fact we can draw a straight line between our DEI initiatives and that success. If you could do that, you would do that. Because you'd be telling the American people, we did not spend your money frivolously. Oh, but she says, oh, well, they didn't talk about it because, you know, it wasn't a popular thing or it had been attacked too much by Republicans. Okay, so they're kowtowing to Republicans' criticisms rather than talking about their successes. But you just can't make that connection. Advocast Diablo, it cost me 10 wasted minutes of my life, well, 30 inscribed minutes. I'm sorry. I apologize. I was just curious. I wanted to know what the New York Times had to say about things. We're only like 14 days away from Trump taking over. Kamala Harris just certified her own failure in her presidential election at the Capitol building. I thought it'd be relevant. I thought it'd be interesting. So, anyway, that's all I had on this. I've got to go now because technically I still should. My lunch hour is now done as I've been here. Back to work because it's just another Monday again. We're into the new year, past the little dead zone of the first week of the new year, and back into the routine of things. But let me know what you thought of this in the comments below as well. If you didn't know, I have a Discord server. Would you like to join the Discord server? Well, let me tell you about the Discord server. Usually I prepare a link to the Discord server before the stream begins, but I was so rushed and going back and forth between work stuff and this that I didn't, but now I do. Now there's a link to the Discord server in the chat. If you'd like to join the Discord server, just click on that link. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me you are not a bot. I have actually watched the stream. Let's earn the right, the title, the entitlement, the privilege, yes, to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is Ebony Williams. Because Ebony Williams just showed up. Hi, Ebony Williams. Just say hello, Ebony Williams, and I'll know that you watched the show. Beyond that, you can find me here Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence, where I'll take a look at TED or TEDx talks of interesting subject matter for critique and analysis, along with TEDx Bingo, because that's fun. This coming Sunday, there will be no Sunday stream. I am visiting my parents over the weekend, and so there will be no Sunday morning stream. But over the course of this week, just like this one, I may do some ambush streams of different topics to make up for it. Or maybe I'll do a Sunday stream on Friday to make up for it. We'll see. Outside of that, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thanks for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the GoFundMe for Moonshock at the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. Very much appreciate it. Leave a like on the way out if you would. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And with that, everybody, hope you have a good rest of your day. Hope you have a good rest of your week. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.